The Sundering, No More Orphans by Hannibal Tabu. Chapter 2, Get ready to roll. The Temple Square was normally traveled by two types of people, adventurers and religious figures. Just to the south of it, however, the Fountain Square was a true mixing of all of the peoples of the nation. Caravans of wagons, farmers bringing goods to sell, merchants and students and families all walked through this portion of Lethesport to access the city or the wharf district or any of a number of locations. Jaith hung a quick right, not going all the way to get close to the humongous limestone fountain and its central statue of Borzoi, water flowing from each of his outstretched hands. On the right side of Main Street, a friendly dwarven woman with a frohawk and braided beard held a basket of warm, fragrant slices of bread. The powerful scent attacked Jaith's senses.
I can never turn down a scene bakery bread.
He knelt down and took a slice, passing her a gold coin while saying,
Much appreciated.
She winked and giggled back as he stood and stepped across the street towards the fabrication. Throughout the nation, arcane engineers and craftsmen of every stripe worked and traded their wares at places called Fabrication, part guild hall, part swap meet. The Lethesport location looked like pieces of dozens of different types of buildings abandoned their places of origin and came together as a hodgepodge conglomeration. Doric columns, medieval battlements, polished marble angles, and craggy, unfinished stone all slapped together in a way that should not stand 45 feet tall. There it was. Jaith stepped into the double glass door and looked up at the dozens of little counter workstations on platforms all along each wall between ladders. In the center of this warehouse-sized space, a huge glass counter full of eccentricities and curios stood at an angle with a gigantic 3.5-foot-long, 2-foot-wide leather-bound book on top of it. From behind the counter, out walked Kavanga, a man with wide-set, hooded eyes and a long orange apron over a white sleeveless t-shirt and baggy, grayish pants.
You used all the infusions, didn't you?
Kavanga asked with a chuckle.
Why do you ask me questions when you already know the answers?
Jaith replied, the first signs of a joyful smile cracking his face today. Kavanga chuckled and reached behind the counter to pull out a small sack. From the clinking sound of metal against glass within, Jaith knew that inside there were a few periops of wound closing and alchemist supplies as well, things he relied upon in the field. As Kavanga handed over the sack, he said,
You know, healing potions from diving across the street are more effective.
Taking off his backpack and putting the sack inside, Jaith said,
I like Davin. Davin's good people. Heck of an apothecary. Davin's not my friend.
Kavanga smirked and gave a knowing nod.
Past the end of the road?
Putting the backpack back on, Jaith extended a hand to Kavanga.
Past the end of the road.
Kavanga grabbed Jaith's forearm and pulled the man into a shoulder hug that Jaith easily accepted. With a smirk and a nod at each other, Jaith turned and left the shop. It was late in the afternoon on this warm, sunny day as the season of the wolf paced towards its apex in 2 months. Jaith retraced his steps towards the Temple Square and continued north, walking past the Paladin Guild Hall known as the Tabernacle. The clang of weapons on shields and armor hanging in the air like a chorus of praise. The towering overlooked neighborhood loomed on hills on both sides of the Northern Temple Road, the massive mansions and skyscraping estates, a sharp contrast to the congestion of Lethesport's south side. A brief 15-minute walk, and Jaith found himself under the rectangular northern gate, a stark gray border around it 80 feet wide, the wall itself towering over 50 feet high. Just outside the gate, on the eastern side of the road, was a small wooden stand with a simple red painted sign 7 feet off the ground and white letters reading Midnight Runners. A series of wagons with some kind of yellow magical stone underneath were lined up behind it, and a tall, beige-skinned, scruffy-looking elf with a long nose and tightly coiled black hair stood there, wearing a brown leather vest over a pair of overalls and a thin-brimmed hat balanced precariously on the back of his head. He straightened up, standing about 6.5 feet tall, and smiled as Jaith approached, saying,
Oi, hello. Welcome to the Midnight Runners. What can I... Wait, Jaith.
The elf came from behind the counter and pulled Jaith into a reluctant hug.
Thank you for taking care of things with that trust guy Alejandro, eh? Where are you going on us today?
Jaith chuckled and said,
You don't got to do that, Dex, yet.
Eileen,
the elf yelled.
come on, Eileen. Let's get a northbound seat ready for Jaith. He's going.
Dexy turned back to Jaith and said,
Where'd you say you were going?
Jaith looked down and sighed, then looked back up at Dexy.
Elderest. I'm going to red-eye it to Elderest.
A buxom elven woman came from behind one of the wagons parked along the northern wall and yelled.
Oi!
She then walked over to one of the mechanical constructs at the front of the wagon and started pulling the levers in its open chest to set it on its path towards a pre-programmed destination. Jaith let Dexy walk him over to the wagon and said,
I won't make you wait for the after-dinner crowd. Off you go, nice and easy. Next time's on you.
Jaith climbed in and found a seat near the middle, next to one of the flaps that could be lifted and used as a window. He checked the secured bindings on his backpack, pulled a dagger and held it in his crossed left hand under his arm, leaned hard against the seat, glanced around, and let himself fall asleep.